Hello, all. You know, whatever the poet writes, he always tries to explore the feelings and express his own feeling and struggles. Whatever the struggles, he is dealing with himself. The agony, the struggles, the challenges. These are such elements that can make a man a poet. And today I am Reena Mishra from SGEC. Welcome you all with all the struggles, agony, fear, anguishes of a poet through this poem. Welcome you all to the crossing of the bar. Before I tell you something about this poem, let me tell you something about the poet. The poet Alfred Lord Tennyson, he was actually a British poet and a great poet laureate of Great Britain and Ireland. He earned this kind of fame during much of Queen Victoria's reign and remains one of the most popular British poets. In 1829, Tennyson was awarded the Chancellor's Gold Medal at Cambridge for one of his best pieces, Timbuktu. He was born on August 6, 1809 in UK and died on the same month, October 6, 1892 in UK itself. Here he wrote many poems like Ulysses, The Charge of the Light Bridge, In Memoriam and many more. As I told you all that whatever the poet uses to write, actually it is his own challenges, his own struggles, whatever he is facing from inside. And Tennyson, through this poem, explores and expresses the agony, the fear, and an elegy of a mariner who is going to die. Let's start the poem with the feeling, with the agony, and with the anguishness of the mariner. My dear students, crossing the bar is a kind of elegy. It is composed in the form of elegy, and here the poet heralds the setting of the sun and the rise of the evening stars. And here's that he is being called. He hopes that the ocean will not make the mournful sound of waves beating against a sand bar. When he set out to sea, he was actually in that time he is very hopeful that ocean will not make any mournful sound with beating his waves against the bar. Rather, he wishes for a tide that is so full that it cannot contain sound or foam and therefore seems asleep when all that has been carried from the boundless depths of ocean returns back out to the depth. The speaker announces the close of the day and the evening bell. The evening bell, which will be followed by darkness, Here, the poet hopes that no one will cry when he departs because although he may be carried beyond the limits of time and space as we know them, he retains the hope that he will look upon the face of his palette when he has crossed the sandbar. Actually, Tennyson wrote Crossing the Bar in 1889, 3 years before he died. And this poem describes his placid and accepting attitude towards death. Although he followed this work with subsequent poems, he requested that this poem appear as the final poem in all collection of his work. Tennyson uses the metaphor of a sandbar to describe the barrier between life and death. Here he describes that a sandbar is a ridge of sand built by currents along a shore. And in order to reach the shore, the waves must crash against the sandbar, creating a sound that Tennyson describes as the moaning of the bar. The other important image in the poem is one of crossing suggesting Christian communalization. Crossing refers both to crossing over into next world and to the act of crossing oneself in the classic Catholic gesture of religious faith and devotion. The religious significance of crossing was clearly familiar to Tennyson, for of crossing was clearly familiar. Why? Because it is an earlier poem of his. The knight and lords of Camelot crossed themselves for fear when they saw the Lady of Shalott lying dead in her boat. Actually, the cross was also where Jesus died. Now, as Tennyson himself dies, he evokes the image again. Now let me explain line to line. Stanza 1. Let me read this stanza 1 first. Sunset and evening is star, and one clear call for me, and may there be no moaning of the bar when I put out to sea. Actually, basically I told you that this poem describes the poet's accepting attitude towards death. Since he is ready to his death, so he says, sunset and evening is stars, and one clear call for me. That sunset, evening stars, and a clear sky. Actually, these all are a kind of one clear call for him. And many there be no mourning of the bar when I put to sea. Maybe there be no mourning of bar. And he assures, he is very, very sure that and may there be no mourning of bar. That ocean will not make the mournful sounds of waves beating against a sandbar, and bar is not going to mourn on his death. He says that when he sets his afterlife journey onto the sea, the bar is not going to mourn on his death. He said that the sunset, the evening stars, and everything, actually these all give a clear call of death for him, and he hopes that bar, sea, they will not mourn on his death when he starts his afterlife journey. Next paragraph. But such a tide as moving seems asleep for sound and foam, when that which dream form won the boundless deep forms turns again home. he says, but such a tide as morning seems asleep. But but again, he says that he wishes for a tide that is so full that it cannot contain sound or foam. He says, but such a tide as moving seems asleep. That he hopes for a tide that could not contain sound or foam. When that which drew from and boundless deep turns again home. And he says that when when the tide contains no sound or foam and therefore seems asleep, when all that has been carried from the boundless depth of ocean, when it returns back out to the depth, when it returns back again for his home or depth. He says, twilight and the evening bell, and after that the dark, and may there be no sadness of farewell when I embark. He says, twilight and evening bell. Here he says that twilight and evening bell they signify the closing of the day. Here he announces the close of the day. With the twilight evening bell, the poet announces the closing of the day, and he says, and after that dark, and he says, and after that evening bell, which will be followed by darkness. Twilight and evening bell they are signified through closing of the day, and he says that evening bell is followed by darkness. Now again he said, and may there be no stillness of farewell when I embark. And he hopes again that no one will cry when he departs. He says he hopes that no one will cry when he departs. Why? Because although he may be carried beyond the limits of time and space, no one will cry. He says, for though from out are born of time and place, the flood may bear me far, I hope to see my palette face to face when I hope cross the bar. Very, very interesting and emotional lines these are. Read the line carefully and please listen. He hopes that no one will cry when he departs. Because why? Because for though from our born of time and place. Because although he may be carried beyond the limits of time and space, as we know them, the flood may be before me. He retains the hope that he will look upon. I hope to see my palace face to face. He hopes that he would be able to look his palate's face. He will be able to look upon the face of his palate when he has crossed the sandbar. Here in this poem, Tennyson uses the metaphor of a sandbar to describe the barrier between life and death. And the religious significance of crossing was clearly familiar to Tennyson, for in an earlier poem of his, The Knight and Lords of Camelot, like Ulysses, he used a lot of metaphor. Means each and every poem of his creates such a background that is full of agony, that is full of fear. So does the poem. Let me tell you, my dear students, crossing the bar refers to the death of a mariner. The phrase has its origin in the fact that most rivers and bays develop a sandbar across their entrances, and crossing the bar meant leaving the safety and the harbor for the unknown. Basically, this poem is a mostly iambic poem with varying line lengths. Its general steadiness of the iambic makes the poem feel assured and to an extent somber, as though the poem is an elegy written in advance of the speaker's own death. The extended metaphor of crossing the bar represents traveling serenely and securely from life through death. The palette is metaphor for God, whom the speaker hopes to meet face to face. Tennyson explained, "The pilot has been on board all the while, but in dark I have not seen him." Again, let me tell you again about this poem. This poem is all about the accepting attitude of the poet towards the death. This poem tells, "The sunset and evening stars and one clear call for me." The poet describes that this sunset and evening stars and this sky, these all elements are clear call of death for him. And may there be no mourning of the bars when I put to sea. And he hopes that when he would put his foot onto the death, onto his approaching death of sea, no one would mourn, no one would be grief stricken on his death. He said that, "But such a tide as morning seems asleep, for full of sound and foam." But such a tide as morning seems asleep. And here in these lines, he hopes a kind of tide that contains no sound, no foam. And in that way, this tide seems asleep. Why? Because for full of sound and foam, because he did not want any kind of tide that contains a lot of noise, a lot of foam. He said again that when that which drew from out the boundless deep turns again home, he said all that he wants a kind of tide which contains no foam, no noise, and therefore seems asleep, when all that has been carried from the boundless depth of ocean returns back out to the depth. He says that however we are restless from our inside, how much we make a noise in this world, but we have to reach back to our goal, to our eternity, to our home. So in his death hour, during his death hour, he did not want any kind of noise, any kind of noising tide. Twilight and evening well, and after that the dark, and may there be no sadness of farewell when I am back. He says that twilight and evening well, and after that the dark. He says, here twilight and evening well, he refers these two elements as the closing of the day. He says that twilight and evening well, these two signify the closing of the day, and after that the dark. And these two elements are followed by darkness. He further says that, and may there be no sadness of farewell when I am back. And he hopes that no one will mourn, no one would be mourning when he steps for his death. No one will be mourning on his death. For though from out our ball of time and place, the flood may wear from me. He says that he hopes that he may be carried beyond the limits of time and space. that again let me explain this line again, that he thought that he may be carried beyond the limits of time and space by his death, as we know them. But still, he hopes that I hope to see my pilot face to face. But he hopes that he is able to look upon the face of his pilot when I have crossed the bar, when he has crossed the sand bar. This is his full attitude, full accepting attitude towards his death, and he is very, very eager to accept his death. And he prays everyone not to mourn on his death. Dear all, this is part 1 of this poem, and this video contains this stuff only. And in our next video, we will be meeting with the poetic devices, with the title appropriation and everything, like part 2. Till then, goodbye. Hope you all will study hard. Till then, goodbye all.